Hello, good morning, and welcome to Deep Waves Transformation, where we dive deep into the realms of mental health, trauma recovery, narcissistic abuse recovery, toxic love relationships, and more. I am your host, Tasha Day, and I am here to guide you through this journey of awareness and healing. Today we have with us, I am super excited to introduce to you Dr. Heather Browne. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a doctoral degree in psychology based out of California. And she is here to discuss mental health along with personality disorders. She is also the author of Speaking with the Heart. Dr. Browne, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Oh, I am great. I am honored to be here, Tasha. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. I am honored and blessed. Thank you. So let's just start off with a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Um, Childhood, because most of us gone through some scars and some challenges. My mom was a paranoid schizophrenic. And so I grew up in a household where realities weren't the same and communication was skewed and agreements and situations changed pretty precariously. And so I think it opened me up to be a little bit more aware, a little bit more concerned, and a little bit more compassionate about some of the difficult places that some of us either are in ourselves or find we're a part of. And so as I went through my life journey and worked on my own healing, which I had quite a bit I needed to do from all of that, I
Right.
started to realize that I just really cared about other people who were in really challenging, confusing situations. And that's one thing with the NPD, the BPD. It starts if not from embryo, it starts from womb, and then childhood as soon as the little one is born with the interactions that they have. And so there's the place of honoring that I think it's very important to look at. There's a lot that goes into someone struggling in the world, and we don't see most of it. It's very easy to be reactive to how they treat us, but there's a place to recognize there's a lot of injury. There's a lot of missed communication and hurt that's gone on for someone to present themselves to the world in that way. And so it led to people coming to me who were struggling because they saw that I wasn't going to have the normal reaction toward them. And that opened up the
Right.
door for different kind of healing, as it does with anything. When you honor something and embrace it and respect it and respond to it with love and compassion, you're going to have a different, whether it's addiction, whether it's lying, whether it's infidelity, whatever it is. When you open up the possibility to say, we really need to talk about what's going on here, takes you to a different place.
Sure. So you would say that your interest in psychology stemmed from your childhood and you just got curious and wanted more knowledge?
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to try to figure out like what happened with mom and though I never have, but also how are we all so different in the world, and how do we cross over, and how do we relate, and how do we really share who we are? And so a lot of my personal journey was trying to figure out who the hell was I, because I
Right.
wasn't who I was viewed as. And I knew that, but I didn't really know who I was if you take away that mirror, which I think,
Right.
very Alan Watts, but it's the place of who am I? It's very hard to know unless I'm doing it in reflection to how you see me. Though there's the inner me that's very different. But in the world, so much of how we engage is how others react and respond to us. And so there's the place of recognizing that. I am
Right.
also that because that is how you perceive me. And so what do I do with that? And then as I just worked deeply on my own work, I worked at a group home for teenage girls, throwaways, because I wanted to give back to girls who had lost their childhood. And I fell madly in love with it. And then I went to master's schools and said, you've got to give me a scholarship. Been on my own since I'm 17. I'm supposed to be a therapist. I can't afford it. And Recon offered. And so I worked really hard, did great work, stayed at the group home for 6 years, and then did lots of training to be able to go off and do private practice. But I knew I wanted to honor people in their personal journey. and give them support and love that my family didn't have back in the 70s, because it just wasn't something that anybody talked about or really did much with. My mom, she was in a straitjacket and locked up in an institution for a couple of days, but that was
Wow.
the extent of the care that she got. And that was by me pleading with the doctors because I knew she was going to kill herself. Kept her alive, but there wasn't any follow-up care, which is shocking. So things have changed tremendously, thank God. But we still have a long way
Right.
to go to be kind to one
Yes.
another as we do
Yes.
this life. Yeah.
Yes. What about your father?
Dad. Well, anyone who's going to marry someone who's a paranoid schizophrenic who's really struggling, you have to kind of think, odd choice there. Bless his heart. He was from the Depression. He was from World War II. He got TB and he was put into a sanitarium for 3 years, so he wasn't allowed to engage with anyone but the nurses. And then when he came out, his entire community bullied him because he hadn't been in war and in combat. So he fled New York and then came and lived in California. And I think he tried to find himself here with a lot of insecurities and a lot of doubts. He leaned on my mom very much to be the emotional support, which she was clearly only able to do to a certain extent. Uh,
Sure.
he tried really hard. He didn't have a lot of information that he needed to have. And then he passed about 20 years ago. So, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Wow. And just to remain resilient and strong and beautiful. I love it. Good for
Well,
you.
that is something I wrote a piece on that. That is one of the biggest gifts that both my mom and dad gave me, is that focus on resilience, that focus on keep trying, on keep plugging. And if I look at two people who endured a lot, it's pretty hard to take my life and say, I can't do this when I look at what my mom and dad went through. And I don't always believe that's the best way to take care of yourself. I kind of think, come on now. But for me, it really does show I really am blessed. I really am fortunate. And
Yeah.
I have created for myself a very different life where I do work on what's going on for me. And I do have close friends that we love each other and care for each other and show up for each other, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, resilience is one of my super strengths.
Yes. I
Yeah.
would agree as well. Especially when you're dealing with personality disorders from
Yeah.
all sorts of different people out there, you know?
Yeah.
Speak to me a little bit about your book, Speaking with the Heart.
So
Where
that
did that
came out of working with couples for so long. And people kept saying, where's the book? Where's the book? We want the book. And it was COVID. We were in lockdown. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to see clients on Zoom, but I'm a widow, so I'm living by myself. And I thought, well, I'll do a TED talk and I'll write a book. And so I did both. But it is so there was a moment in my childhood where my mom was fearful that the helicopters flying over the house were coming to get her. And my dad did, what most dads would do. Ginny, you're crazy. It's all in your head. They're not coming to get you. But I remember looking at her and she was absolutely petrified, absolutely petrified. And I'm watching my dad say, it's in your head. And I'm watching my mom losing it. And I thought, this isn't working. What does she need? And she needed to feel safe. So as a
right?
12-year-old would do, I grabbed my blue blankie, Bambi, threw it over
Uh-huh.
her head, and I just said, they're not going to get you, Mommy. They're not going to get you. And I just held her as the shaking went down and down and down and down. And she eventually came out and she looked at me with eyes that said, you believe me, which I didn't.
Right.
And I knew that. I knew that I didn't believe her reality. But I did know that I believed she believed her reality. And something in my
Right.
head just kind of went, this is why you're here. And I'm like, oh. And so we had started this unique relationship more so than we have had, where I would try to be that bridge when she could come back. She never took me with her. Would have loved to have seen where she went. but I could be the bridge to kind of help her come back. And then that crystallized into the work that I do. And I see myself as that. I see myself as the bridge between people, between couples, between a child and a mother, or a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or a boss and an employee, of how do we help you both recognize the other person has a different reality? And how do you have some compassion for that? And where do we connect? My mom and I connected on she needed to feel safe. Okay,
Right.
I can provide that. I couldn't provide what she was scared from, but I could provide that. And so when you start to be curious, which is a key word, about
Yes.
how can we connect, where do I feel like I kind of understand what you're talking about? Where can I have compassion for the feelings that you're having? It's a whole different relationship and conversation, because then you're not butting heads. Then you're not, no, 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 no. It's not all negation. It turns into, okay, well, I get that. And then from that, you can keep building and building and building. Our challenge in this world is we negate the other by demanding that they recognize us, and they don't. And then we feel dishonored, we feel lost, we feel confused. Instead of looking for the other to say, well, where can I connect with you, or what can I understand with you? Or where are we possibly similar? We're
Right.
so much more similar if we would just recognize that we're similar. And
Exactly. I love how you just put that. We just need a little understanding and knowledge and education. We really do. It's that simple.
yeah, and to really take the truth of, we're all here. We're all here. So I don't
Mhm.
have any bigger reign to this life than anybody else, but certainly not less. And if I want you to respect me, dear God, I got to start by respecting you. It's
Yes,
just
exactly.
silly in what we do and what we say. We scream and yell, you're supposed to respect me. And I just sit there and think, well, yeah, it's kind of hard when you're screaming and yelling at me. So there's the place of looking at how we choose to be as humans and laugh at it, and then also kind of give us really big hugs and say, like, this is hard, but let's do this better. And I
Yeah.
think you look at the personality disorders, and that's an easier place to see the disturbance. It's a little bit
Yeah.
easier to see where it doesn't line up quite as well, but it's also a really important place to say, gosh, something isn't going well. What could be helpful here? And in
Right.
all of them, well, for every single person on the planet, compassion.
Right. But would you agree that the most easiest emotion to express at times of conflict would be anger? So that's what we automatically resort back to.
Well, it
Just
also
get
makes us
angry at each
feel
other.
strongest. It
Right.
makes us feel stronger than being sad. But if you look at anger, it stems from, I feel, two things: fear or hurt. I'm either
Yep.
fearful that you don't love me, you're not going to respect me, you're going to go away, or I'm hurt by something you've said, you've done, you haven't said, you haven't done. And so instead of being willing to share that, we tend to fight back. You don't love me, you don't care about me. If you think about what we're doing energetically, I'm hurt or I'm fearful, so I'm pulling in. And so what I do to protect myself is I push you away.
Hmm.
The reality is, I'm scared and I'm fearful, and what I really need is to be embraced, or to find my ground and stay solid within myself, because I'm feeling a lack of within me.
Right.
And so I push you away, and then I really am aware of my emptiness. Whereas if I would stop and say, okay, wait a second, you for sure are not loving me right now. Gotta
Yeah.
take care of me, baby girl. And then
Yeah.
engage with you. Then I'd be able to do it in a much, much more productive way. But we we create that which we don't want. I didn't want you to hurt me. I didn't want you to cause something that led me to feeling fearful, but now I'm going to hurt you back. And so we do it reactively, but it's completely counterproductive to what it is
Right.
that we're really
Absolutely.
seeking. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing gets solved. Tell me about the biggest conflict that you've had in dealing with the profession that you're in? Maybe it could be a client even. What's the hardest thing that you've had to get through and work through with the client?
Well, it probably was the one I wrote my dissertation on. She was
Oh,
she was borderline, and she was my fourth client.
okay.
And I remember on the phone call feeling something was really off. And I remember thinking, this is going to be a tough client. There's a lot here. I'm not quite sure what's going on. And she had all these challenges with working with me. I was too young, I was too far away, it was too expensive, like all of these things. And I just said, sounds like I'm not the right person for you. No problem. Keep looking. And then of course she rushed back. And I remember my my husband came to see my office because I just started at that office. And there was a card from her. And I hadn't had a session yet, and my husband said, "Oh, isn't that sweet?" And I remember looking at him and I said, "Oh no, I am in so much trouble."
Oh,
And he
no.
he didn't get it, but she would go so dark,
Mm.
so dark, and like her bones in a graveyard. She would talk in these ways, and she would get angry with me, and then, she would quit therapy, and then she would call 15 times that day to plead me to take her back. The time where we had probably one of the biggest breakthroughs, this is gonna scare listeners, but she pulled a knife on me in session. And I remember
Oh,
looking at her and thinking, okay, Heather, you gotta think super fast. And I knew she didn't want to kill me. So it wasn't like I was fearful for my life, but I wasn't certain that she wasn't going to, like, taunt me quite a bit or slash or something. So what came to my head was, why are you wanting to make me scared of you?
right.
And I just sat there and she just started crying. And I said, why would you do that? Do you want me to throw you out? And then she cried more and more and more. And then I said, I will continue to work with you, but now we're sadly going to have rules. You're not going to be able to bring a backpack. You're not going to be able to bring a purse. I'm going to have to pat you down. And I told her, I said, I find this really sad, really sad. And I
Absolutely.
worked with her for 4 years. She was so difficult. And I grew with her tremendously. I wrote my dissertation on her. It's called A Tomato is a Tough Fruit. Um, but I learned probably more with her than any client because it was such a tough process. And she reaches out to me every once in a while and she says, I just want to let you know I'm alive and I'm so grateful for all that you did. And I'm incredibly proud of her. And when she shared her childhood, one thing that stood out is she never felt that her mother wanted her ever, ever. And I honor clients' gut feelings. So I said, well, there must be something in that. Have you ever talked to your mom about what happened, when she was pregnant or what was going on in their relationship or, was she sick or what was happening? And her mother literally said that her mom put um, clothes hanger to try to abort her while she was within the
Oh,
womb, which then created this place for my client to be able to say, so these feelings I've had my whole life are valid. And that opened a horrific door, but a really healing door once we cleaned through so much of that hurt. But there's a massive amount of confusion that goes on in a borderline's life in the early stages. And something that I find important, I'm going to say fascinating, but important, people will decide that a borderline is because a parent has not been a good enough parent, they've been absent. Not always. I've had borderlines where the child was in a car accident and was in the hospital for several months. Or I had one where the father was in the military and sent off to war and the mom had to work with her. The mom loved her, but was absent a lot. So it's the place not so much where the parent has necessarily not been great, though that's common, a lot of times it's that the environment that the child has been in has cultivated that. And so there's that split of not being able to see that someone can be loving and someone can also do something that's hurtful, and that doesn't make them either, God or Satan. It's the split that happens. And that to me is something that's prevalent with all the personality disorders. That inability to integrate. It has to be all or nothing. I'm either
Right.
like the
Splitting it
narcissist.
there's no gray.
Say, and if you go to the dependent, like, no, you can't leave me. There's not an ability to shift back and forth, and they're in different ways. The narcissist is you have to live your life, to honor me and glorify me. That's theirs, or you're worthless. The borderline is you either recognize how phenomenal and amazing my love is, or you are evil and trying to hurt me. The dependent, you either love me or you don't. So it's that huge split, and trying to help them create the gray takes time. It's
Right.
possible, but it takes a lot of time. And that individual has to have an incredible desire. I remember that client said to me one day, she called me up. We'd been working together for 3 years, and she said, for the first time in my life, for about 15 seconds, I felt normal. And I thought,
Wow.
oh,
Wow.
she was like 38 years old. First time in her life, she just felt like she was a human being like anybody else. And I thought, how amazing we've gotten there, and how incredibly sad.
Right.
Yeah.
For all those wasted years, but at least she came to realize, right? Sooner
And
rather than
willing
later.
to work really hard. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But the
So,
difficulty you have, especially because I work more so with borderline, is as a therapist, what they'll put you through, because lot of manipulative in the boundaries. So, they'll ask for a session. You'll say you have sessions these times on Monday, these times on Tuesday, these times on Thursday, these times on Friday. And, then the response is, oh, you don't have anything for me on Wednesday. It's always what you don't do. And there's lots of, at least I've had it, where they won't be honest about what's going on. They'll say they fell upon a knife, when actually no, they like shoved it into their hand. And so you're having to continually try to get to what is the truth of what's going on. I had a client who told me, I will run away frequently. This is what I do. So when I stop doing therapy and I run away, I need you to know that's what I'm doing. And we had that dynamic for a little while. But then one day I said to her, like, no, this isn't okay, because I'm not honoring what you're saying. So you
right.
can be angry with me that I'm not honoring what you're saying, and I'm caring more about me than you. So this isn't going to work for us. I will say to you, do you think you might be running away? Because if you are, I'd like you to stay and like to talk about it. But if you choose to run away, I will let you run away. It's not my role to decipher, are you being honest or are you lying to me? But there's a desire to put you in that place, because then you're responsible. And that's really, to me, a huge piece about personality disorders. They like to make you responsible for any problem. It's not them, and that you have wronged them, hurt them, not loved them, not respected them enough. But that wasn't on that. They would have loved you so completely if only you hadn't done this thing that you did. But because you did, now they can't, and it's all on you. So there's an incredible amount of shame and blame of the other, and definitely a personal disregard of responsibility in all
Right.
of that.
Right. So I discussed heavily within this past week targeting two specific disorders, borderline personality and narcissistic personality disorder, and just shared a ton of information because I've gone through it. I experienced it. It was traumatic. I'm still healing, still growing from that. It was just devastating. So the more information that I can put out there, the better, to help people recognize the red flags before it gets too late, to be honest. So I would like to discuss with you a little bit more on those two specific disorders. What's the difference between the two, and what do you know about the two?
Sure. Well, with the narcissistic, it's going to be the grandiosity where they are better than everybody else. They are phenomenal. No one can do what they do. And then you'll very quickly hear that people have held them back, or especially you'll hear legal aspects. The boss didn't understand, so therefore the court didn't recognize their brilliance, so they threw out, or the attorney had some agenda against. There's this persecution thing that happens with the narcissist. But the narcissist's view is because they've been raised to feel they're amazing, they're incredible, and their life is to be glorious and wonderful, and people are here to lift them up and make their life beautiful and incredible. In the beginning, they will, if it's a romantic relationship, completely love bomb you because
Yes.
they're viewing you as this perfect person who's finally going to see them as being perfect. And you'll hear people say, whenever they say it, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm probably going to pop your bubble right now. But when they say it's too good to be true, it was like a fantasy. It was like a dream. I felt like I was Cinderella. I so want them to enjoy that blissful moment, and then I have to say, but this isn't reality. So, like, it was tacos. You're meaning for tacos. So we need to just be a little aware that your heart is racing really fast, and you're going to really big places, and there's huge thoughts that are going on there. The narcissist will be amazing to you, and they're brilliant and incredibly charming because they're very good at helping people see the reason to stand behind their wonderment. The challenge is when they feel that you don't recognize them enough. And it often happens when either you get some sort of praise or when you have another relationship with somebody and they're now not the center. If they're okay not being the center, you're fine. But all of a sudden it'll shift and they're not the center. And most of them then are incredibly hurtful, mean, destructive, will try to pull you away from others. Lots of triangulation going on, talking behind your back, lots
Mm.
of gaslighting. Now, the covert narcissist is different because they talk more so about how they're not so wonderful in a way for you to try to build them up. And
Mhm.
so there's the the direct narcissist. You'll see the actions very vividly because they're just out. They don't cover anything. The covert, it's all covered in poor me, and my life didn't go as the way I wanted my life to go, and you know I just need help, and I can't do this, and I need you to take care of me. It's almost like a little child pleading with mommy, to keep sucking on
Yes.
the tit. So they're very different, but they're both narcissists. It still comes down to you are here to take care of me. One is to glorify me and let me show my brilliance, and the other is to love me no matter what, and to understand that when I have affairs or lie and cheat or gamble, that it's just because my self-esteem is so low. It's not that I'm really trying to hurt you, which is all another, mind game that goes on. The truth is they don't have good self-esteem because
That
they're
is the
constantly in competition
truth.
with somebody else. And that's what's really sad because you see them either screaming for your attention to fill them up or needing you to applaud them. But there isn't a place of, two people really connecting. It's all in fantasy and in romance and in this huge significance. And so you end up feeling very unseen, used, unimportant, undesired. It's a painful place to be in a relationship with a narcissist because you become exhausted. And then what happens for most people is you start to lie. You start to hide because you don't either want, on the covert side, the emotional depressive loop, or you don't want the screaming and yelling. And so what most people do is they stop getting together with their friends. They pull back from seeing their family.
The
Um,
self-isolation, right?
and it's protection, because if you go, you're going to get it. And so to try to keep your partner from being angry with you, you stop doing things that make them angry. But what that does, especially in the narcissist situation, is you lose all your support.
Yeah, and
You
you
lose
lose
all the
yourself.
people who, yes, and your dreams and your desires and your self-esteem, because it's all
Yes.
tied up in them. And so that's the biggest challenge with the narcissist is you kind of get gobbled up, or you let yourself get gobbled up and you lose who you are. And so, and some are so incredibly mean and hurtful, especially when it comes to your hurt and how you love, or physically. They will use things against you. I knew a narcissist, and he used my mom killing herself against me in a conversation. I'm like, oh, you are not a safe human being for me to converse
Yeah.
with. And I stepped out of wanting to pursue anything with that person because it was clearly to hurt me. They want to, because then you plead for them to love you. And
Why do
then
you think that is? Is it just the lack of not getting it from their parents, or why do they expect us to give them everything and they're not giving us anything?
because I've never had to. They've been told the world will give it to you. And you just have to
Okay.
find the boss who sees your glory, the partner who recognizes your wonder. So th- they don't let themselves truly have what they have. It's all image, it's all how it looks. So, like, you would never hear a narcissist saying, like, I'm just sitting at home having a cup of tea, contemplating how I can help the world. Like, no,
Yeah, no.
they don't move into that place. And I think it's because they've been told, the world is your oyster and it's going to bow down to you. So they then believe it. If I had been told that my whole childhood, you are the most phenomenal person who was ever born on this planet. You are here for the most important mission. Everyone, though they might not know it, but they are here to help you. And you need to find those people who recognize your brilliance. I would go out into the world like that. And I would convey myself as being brilliant and phenomenal and how important I am. And people would be like, oh, she's phenomenal. She's important. Let me help her out. So we're kind of like herd animals, like we follow. And so when someone says, look at me, we're like, oh, okay, okay. And we
Yeah, yeah.
follow along. And so I think the same thing happens with the narcissist. And they haven't ever been told about self-responsibility. It's other responsibility. They're important, but it's others' responsibility. And so they don't clean up their stuff. It's always someone else's fault, and then they just walk away from it.
Right. Do you think narcissists target certain people?
Yeah, absolutely. People pleasers, like, they're liquid gold for them. They do want someone. So anyone who's been with a narcissist, I'm going to give you some kudos. They
Thank you.
target really kind, really creative, really flexible, really um like vital and alive, physically beautiful. They really want that for sure. Um yeah, phenomenal human being. A phenomenal human being. The piece which it becomes problematic is highly accepting. And I think that's normally a beautiful thing. It starts to become a problem with a personality disorder, just like it starts to become a problem with someone who has an addictive problem. Highly forgiving, highly understanding. And
Highly
so
empathetic.
they choose really good people, really good, lovely people, and people who I think, on some level, have not been recognized, they feel, in their life for as much as they would like. And someone who holds a little bit to that fantasy of romance and, the golden ticket. Because when the person comes, you get caught up in it instead of kind of saying, oh, dear Lord, they're so full of themselves. I remember I went on a first date with a narcissist and we went out for 2.5 hours and he asked me 3 questions. And I heard his life story. And I remember
Uh-huh.
sitting there thinking, wow, wow, wow. And so I thought, how do I get out of this? Because I knew it wasn't something to pursue. So I did something I've never tried before. It worked really, really well. I appeased to his phenomenalness. And so I said, this has been incredible. Clearly, I've never in my life gone out with someone like you, ever.
Uh-huh.
And I'm so honored that you would, give me this time to just hear about how incredible your life is. But it's very apparent we live in different circles, and I can't even in any way keep up with yours. So thank you so much for this time. You do need someone who is so much more powerful and profound and
Oh,
aware and
you started
alive
the
and
evil.
vital than he. And he just started backpedaling. I'm like, no, 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 don't. It's okay. I'm
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
I love me. I'm just very simple compared to the life that you live. Like I don't have the government asking me to be involved with all of this and, judges who know about me trying to create things for the world. Like I don't have that life and that's okay. But I really wish you the best and thank you so much. And he said, I really hope you'll change your mind. And I just looked at him and I said, I won't because
I will.
I don't live that life, but thank you. And he said, well, you have
Yeah.
my number. And I said, I do. Thank you. And I thought, oh, what a great way to step out because it was respectful, I felt, without being rude or distasteful, but there was just no way. There was no way.
Right.
So, with a narcissist, the biggest key is it's like fantasy. It's like a dream. And then the flowers come, the cards come, and you're the most beautiful woman in the whole wide world. And I've never met anybody like you. And that sounds great, but you've gone out for tacos. It's just way too inflated. And one thing that's important to know about the narcissists is they're brilliant. So they will pick up on the things that you say. Like if you say, my mother died, then there's going to be some huge piece where that becomes very important because they will use that to kind of reel you in. You know,
Which is
you
crazy that you said that because my mother did end up passing away in 2019. And then 3 months later is when I met him for the first time. And he saw how vulnerable I was. He saw how just destroyed I was emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. I mean, my life was a mess. I couldn't work. I couldn't cook. I couldn't clean. I couldn't do anything but be in bed and cry like all day. And I feel like he saw that and took advantage of that completely.
well, it's also an interesting time to step into somebody's life. Gee, would you and my girlfriend, you're in bed, devastated, you can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't cook. Let me come take care of you, sweet little wounded one. It sounds
Yeah.
lovely, but then what's going to happen when you become superwoman once again?
The discard.
My wrist was shattered in a bike accident, and a lot of people have said to me, "Go online." I'm like, "Oh, hell no!" They're like, "It's the perfect time. You've got nothing to do." I'm like, I can't drive, can't can't put on earrings, can't put my hair in a ponytail, can't put on tennis shoes, can't ride a bike, can't cut. Like, and they're like, "But you'll meet a nice guy who wants to take care of you." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then in 4 months, when my wrist is back to normal, I'm not going to want that person saying, "Honey, let me put your hair in." I'm like, "Yeah." Like,
Yeah, yeah,
no.
yeah.
So it's
You're so
interesting when
right.
someone steps in. And yeah, I mean, you're
There was
primed, but you
times
need
where
love.
like he would go grocery shopping for me and just show up at my doorstep with all these groceries. And then he would like make car payments for me and like just play this like
Wow.
hero. And then 3 months later, I met him in July. In November, he's asking me to move in with him. And I did. At that point, I
Well,
didn't
it
have
has
any
to be fast.
first wall.
It has to be fast because it's part of the conquering that they need to do. And they also need to get you really in so that there isn't competition with anybody else, but also before you start seeing that they're going to treat you like crap.
I was
'Cause
gonna
it's gonna
say
occur.
the mask that they portray. How long does that typically last for? Usually, in my experience, about 3 to 4 months,
Yeah.
and then it comes down.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll see flare-ups really early on. Like they say, yeah, I got really mad. I'm like, oh, what's that? But yeah, 3 to 4 months is about the longest anyone can. And by then they want to be living with you or some huge commitment because,
Oh, an engagement even came after that. It
of
was
course,
incredible.
of
Yeah.
course, it's real fast because they need to control you. It's all
Hmm.
part of that. So what we receive as, oh, you love me so much is really the beginning of control. Now you have to eat the way I buy food for you. Now you have to dress the way I want you to dress. Now
Mhm.
you're not going to be dating anybody else. It starts to turn into the way they Barbie you into
Groom.
yeah,
Yeah,
completely.
the grooming process. Yeah.
Completely. And you were also more attractive because your mom was gone. So you didn't have that challenge for him with the mom being concerned, wanting your time. For a narcissist, somebody who has no close friends and no family would be ideal, but they're not attracted to that person because they want someone who the world loves and adores. Because if you then love and adore them, then that means even so much more. But then they want all of your attention, and they're very jealous of anybody else who
Right? 'Cause
wants to spend time with you.
I had the most huge circle when I met him. Like, I was my son's team mom for his football team. So I'm surrounded by all these kids. I was a teacher at the time. So be him going to the football games and being involved in what I was doing, he was all for it at first, but then I started to notice, like, he came to me one night, and this was concerning my daughter, she was in the bedroom below us. And he came to me and said, I know your daughter is sneaking out of her window at night. So what do? I go downstairs and I confront her, and that created so much conflict that it literally tore our relationship apart. Me and her, me and my son, me and my dad, me and my grandparents, me and every single family member was completely stripped to the
And
point where I was just self-isolated, and then I would end up in our bedroom doing nothing, just being in bed all day. Like, I would go to work and then I'd go to the bedroom because he self-isolated me so much I didn't have anybody.
yeah. Well, they
And
need to because they need to be all. They need to be your world. They need to be everything. And you'll also find very quickly that they'll find reasons for everyone to be beneath them. So in the
we're
beginning, like my daughter went out with one, and in the beginning, he talked about how amazing I was, but I could feel this like disdain underneath right away, actually. And I told it to her. I'm like, there's an energetic challenge here. There's something that's not clean, that's not of love. He's got a challenge with women, I think. And he would just make comments. My son's in the military, and the comment was, well, who would want to throw their life away doing that? I'm like, if you're going to be in our family, you're going to need to recognize that my son is very proud of the service that he's doing. And it's fine that you don't choose that. But who are you to tell my son that he's throwing his life away when he's actually saving other people's lives? And so
sure.
very quickly for my daughter and I, it became very apparent that I wasn't just going to follow, in my opinion, his agenda, which then, of course, created tension between he and I because I didn't agree with him. And I would point out the things that I thought were disrespectful or rude or hurtful. There was one time I was with my daughter at a restaurant. He was there and he was angry with her because she wasn't willing to do a business with him. And some man walked by. They'd been together for 8 months. And he said, you matter to me as much as that man. And I saw
Oh,
my
wow.
whole face go. And I looked at him and I said, what the hell? What the hell? That says so much about how little you love people. And his whole face went red. I'm like, that's what it says. Doesn't say anything about how phenomenal my daughter is. Shows how disposable people are for you. And I said, babe, you need to listen to what he said. You mean as much to him as somebody who just walked by with a cafeteria tray. That's just ugly,
That
hurtful.
is so ugly. Wow.
And they do destroy you if you let yourself be destroyed. And it's hard to not, because there's the fantasy of they love me so much. I've never had a love like this before. They're just a little bit angry. They're just a little bit mad. And they also always come back and but, and this is something that I'm sure you'll recognize. They come back, but they come back with, I really want to love you, but I just need you to do this differently. The narcissist does not come back and plead for you to stay as you are. And
This
that's
is
a huge
actually kind of funny
key.
because we broke up. We've actually been together twice. So we were together for a certain amount of time. We broke up. I moved out. Then he comes back to me saying, I'm going to get into therapy. I'm on medication now, like building me up for I'm a better man now. So I actually can deserve you this time. So what do? I fall for it and I go back and I move in with him. Oh my God, biggest mistake. I should make. But actually, it's not. It's like the biggest lesson that I will be forever grateful for, because without that trauma, I would not be or have built this success that I have now. So
Yeah.
I'm honestly grateful to him every single day. I
There's
wasn't
a
at the time.
there's a place for that. We learn the most from the people who are the hardest in our lives. And when we
Right.
can look at them and say, like my daughter's boyfriend, oh Lord, did Mama Heather have to go through a whole bunch of self-growth? Because the very first time I met him, I told her, oh, this is going to be so unbelievably hard. And she said, really? I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be so hard. And I said, but because you love him, I will learn to. And I
I,
felt that. And she said, well, what's going to happen? And I said, well, you've chosen him. She goes, what do you mean? I said, you've already chosen him. It's clear. So it doesn't really matter what I think. You've chosen him. She's like,
Mhm.
Mom, no, this is the truth. One day you've chosen him. And she said, well, what's going to happen? I said, well, fortunately for you, he's also chosen you. So as long as the two of you keep choosing each other, I don't know what's going to happen with me and all the other people in your life, but you two will be okay. Be very mindful when he doesn't choose you,
Yes.
because it will
Yeah.
happen. And that is
Yep.
the challenge that happens again and again and again. And then there's all these promises. I get a phone call like, I can't be in this, I need to leave. And I'd say, okay, I'm coming tomorrow to pick you up. And in the morning, I get a phone call. We had a great talk. Oh my gosh, one of the best talks ever. We're all good. And I'm like, baloney. But
Yeah.
there's always I want this so badly, it will be different, instead of
Right.
this is the change I'm making right now. And the changes don't last. It's once again that fantasy. We're
Right.
supposed to be destined to have this incredible relationship. Don't you understand? How could you throw this away? Nobody
We're
has a love like
soulmates.
this. Like,
We're
no, you're
soulmates. That's
hurting me
like the
right now.
most
This isn't
fun.
great. This isn't great. I don't feel. I'm saying to my daughter all the time, do you really feel deeply loved? She's like, most times no. Like, most times
Things you're
no.
trying. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say, in your opinion, are some red flags for people to look out for if they are entering in a relationship with a narcissist? Just in general, it could be work related, um,
Listen to
intimate.
what they say about their exes. Listen to what they say about their exes. You can have been in a
It's so
horrible relationship and you do not need to disparage the person. They will normally say, she was crazy,
Mhm.
she was possessive, she was emotionally, immature. Listen to what they say about their exes. It's always somebody else's fault.
Well, actually, it's crazy because in my case, he never threw those words out with his ex. It was he's still actually in love with his ex, and there would be messages saying that he was. And so they were like extremely close. And it was, like,
Oh,
really weird that he wanted me to be so close to her and the dynamic, and it was just like,
well, why
"No,
if
I
he was
don't."
still in love with her, were they not together?
Exactly. Because I don't think she wanted him at the time. She's dating multiple people, and yeah, I just don't think that because she was not available at the time. But
Mm.
then, however, when she and her boyfriend broke up, that's when he would go to her and be like, "I miss what we had. I love you," and, yada, 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 just hurtful stuff that I had found out later on that this had been going on our whole relationship, that he has always
So
felt this way about her.
not clean within relationships. Challenges there with people having different viewpoints is one. Certainly the love bombing. It's just bizarre if you go on one date and they're buying you flowers and they're leaving you 10 tacks and they can't live without you. And I mean, you just have
Oh, yeah.
come on. So that
You've been
rush
all my life. You're the most perfect woman I could have ever asked for, yada, yada, yada. I've heard it all. Yeah.
and I mean, you got to be a little bit honest with yourself. It sounds lovely, but you're like, no, like I've got
But you
wrinkles
don't
on my
know me.
face.
You know nothing about me.
Right. Like I will like, fart once in a while or every once in a while I don't make my bed neatly or I'll eat peanut butter out of the spoon. Like I'm not perfect. Nobody is. So that
Yeah.
huge inflation is a big part. Quickly wanted to take up all of your time
Yes.
and that's another place. You want to meet their friends. Interesting to meet their friends. Some narcissists have friends and some
Oh,
really
yeah.
good friends, but it's very
Oh,
interesting to
yeah.
meet their friends and just kind of watch like what goes on.
Yeah. And it's
Who's
interesting in my case that a few of his friends after the relationship came to me and was like, "I am so glad you got yourself out of there.
Yep.
Thank God. Like, how did you not see this sooner? Like, I'm so glad you got away from him." And I'm like, what do I say to that at the time? Like, I wasn't educated on narcissism. I mean, I had started reading about it and
Yeah.
the traits that came along with it, but I wasn't fully recognizing that that's what he was until the very end when I got out.
Well, and part of it is, we're raised on fairy tales.
Oh, yeah. And
And the
I was
narcissist
Cinderella,
kind
like
of
you
looks
said.
like
I
the
was
white
beautiful
knight.
Cinderella that turned into the actual maid Cinderella.
Yeah. But we're raised on that. And so part of us does want that. And the hero and to be swept off our feet and to have someone finally see that we're so beautiful and so wonderful. It's just when it's, and it's not that you can't have those things, but those things should come with time,
Right.
not immediately. Someone can be like, absolutely think you're absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous. No problem. That can happen in an instant. And I'm sure it happens to you a lot. But
Oh,
there's a difference between you're the most amazing woman I've ever met my whole life, and I want to spend my life with you, and you're to be the mother of my children. I mean, that takes some time and some getting to really know the person. So the question for me is always, well, what is this grounded on? If it's just that my face is the most spectacular face you've ever seen your whole life, okay, like that's cool. But
yeah.
other things, no. You don't know that I'm the most amazing person. You don't know that. And
Which
and
would be
there's
a
the
red
question of
flag.
why do you even want to go there instead of really like get to know me?
Right.
Yeah.
So another red flag would be, what would you say?
Um,
Beyond the lip bombing.
Anger, you're probably not going to see that quickly though. That takes a little while to come up, but the anger is very, very hot, very, very intense, and very, very cruel.
Mhm.
Um,
What about entitlement, where they think they own you and they're entitled to do whatever to you?
well,
And
that will
this,
come
I'm
quickly.
even talking about as far as like sexual abuse,
Oh,
because that's
that'll
what he.
happen quickly. Yeah. That's like taking
Right.
over their time, wanting to cut everybody out. And there's a lot of it's the manipulation. Like
Mhm.
you're just not sexually experienced. I'm going to show you. You just don't know. You're this sweet little girl who's been in this relationship and that's fine, but let me open you up too. You could be this goddess. And so it's toward what they want and not so much toward what you want. You'll even see that in what they do. They'll bring you the huge bouquet of flowers. They'll bring you the box of chocolate, but they haven't said, what's your favorite flower? Now they'll start to ask those things, and then they'll like memorize everything to,
Yeah.
give it to you as you like. But start to ask yourself, like, how much are you really asking about me? And how much space is there for you to care about my feelings? It'll be very little because it's so inflated. You'll come off a date like, wow, oh my gosh, that was incredible. We did this and we did this and la 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 la. You're like in la la land. You almost feel like you've taken, a little bit of ecstasy or something. Not that
Yes.
I ever have, but that place of feeling like you're just in bliss. Like this is otherworldly. You have to kind
Right.
of look at that. And it's not that there aren't men that do that. I remember going on a date with one guy and it was that. Like he was fantastic. He was just a great guy and he loved to make women feel like a princess. But he wasn't saying he was grandiose. Like when we were dancing on the dance floor, he was laughing because we were both stumbling and we were having
Ah,
a blast because he's like, I'm really bad at this. I'm like, so am I. And so it was fun because it felt human. Being with a narcissist doesn't feel human. It
wow.
feels
Yeah.
so big. So
I've
ask
never heard
yourself,
it that way.
but isn't that true? You
It is
didn't
very true,
feel
and I've
like
never
you
heard it
really
put that way.
knew your heart and knew you. It's just too inflated.
Well, looking back, I just felt like a complete robot that was controlled with a remote, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
What
it's
would you say?
pretty hard sometimes to look back and say, I know my daughter went through this. It was so hard. She was embarrassed by some of the things
Yeah.
that she did. And like I remember her telling me one time she used to beg him back and she'd go on her knees and I'm like, oh baby. She's like, Mom, I did. And I'm like, oh,
Oh
I just want to
no.
hug you.
Oh no.
What a sad reality of like I did this because I was so desperate to not lose him.
Right. Because they groomed you that way, and then once you get out, you carry this guilt and shame and
And
yeah.
it's so important if you're in that relationship to really be around people who love you. Cause like I just hugged on my little girl and just said, "Oh, baby, I'm just so sorry that anybody would ever even think of put like if that had been me, I'd be like, oh, please get up, get up, get up, get up, get up." Would never
Yeah.
want someone to defame themselves in that way, but that's very seductive and attractive because it feeds their ego. And so if you're stepping out of a relationship, take some time to really care for you and love on you because it has been missing for a long time. And you
Right.
want to be kind to yourself.
Definitely.
That's not a word that you would use with a narcissist. They're not
No.
kind. They're not gentle. They're not, that might not be true, but they're not
No,
kind.
you're actually right because like even like the physical touch would never be gentle. I'm like, how? Like you're like
Mm,
even rubbing my face, I'm like, you're rubbing too hard. Like my face is numb. He was never soft. It was always harsh and it hurt.
mm.
So yeah. What would you say if someone is struggling being in a narcissistic relationship right now? What would you tell them? Because I know a ton of
Oh,
my viewers are in those types of relationships. So what would
if
you
you
say?
can, go see a therapist, read books. If you can, be careful. You got to be careful because you can really get hurt in all ways with a narcissist, but try to get try to get outside support from people and just ask yourself, do I feel safe?
Good question.
Do I
Good.
truly feel loved? Am I sure that we have a future? Like if you're saying no, 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 then you know you're in a challenging relationship. Um, your partner will probably not want to go to therapy with you because therapists know nothing and they're just going to fill your head with all sorts of garbage to make you not
Yes.
how amazing they are. So a
Yes.
therapist isn't a real benefit in couples counseling to a narcissist until they realize they really want a healthy relationship. But as much as you can, there's so much online. Like, read about it and just keep asking yourself, like, if I were to let myself leave, just throw this out there. If I were to let myself leave, what would I do? How would I be different? How would I take care of myself? And am I willing to give that to myself? Because you can't have yourself in a narcissistic relationship. You can't, because
Right.
they start to own you, possess you. So if you do leave, it's important that you are at the place where there's enough, like for you, when you're at the ocean, that there's enough desire to say, like, I'm saying yes to me. I am saying yes to me. This is my life. It might be hard. I might be renting a room. I might need to have 2 jobs, but I'm not giving my life away to this person anymore. And then be careful in the way that you separate if you have joint
Oh,
property,
yes,
things
because the
like that.
discard, that's the ugliest part about the relationship,
Yeah.
I feel.
But you need to know you're not alone. And you need to know this is not all because of how you have been. And you also need to know that it's not right for anyone to ever try to hurt you. And you don't
Right.
need to be in a relationship where someone does that. I remember saying to my daughter, like, why do you want to be in a relationship where there's so little love? I don't understand. And it was
Right.
that fantasy of we'll get there. But if it's a fantasy, there's that place of asking yourself, do I feel safe? Do I feel loved? Do I feel like I'm partnered? Do I feel like I'm important? And if the answer is no, 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 you're giving the other person way too much power.
And also ask yourself, because I learned this question too, how do you feel when you step away from the narcissist for
Mm.
even an hour or a couple of hours? How do you feel inside? If it's better, then you obviously know the truth. There's your answer right there.
Yeah.
And I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Just within the 5 minutes I drove out of the driveway, I'm like, "Hmm, I can be myself, you know?
Yeah. Ask yourself, like, what's the main energetic dynamic? Shame, blame. Like, you can't go to a narcissist and be vulnerable after they've
Yeah, I was
slipped
never offered that safe
to the angry
space.
side. It's not okay for you to be insecure. It's not okay for you to question. It's not okay for you to process. All of those things are not acceptable, which shows that's fear-based. Because if you do that, you might uncover something or realize something that I won't like. Instead of, yeah, do find out what you need, find out what you want. I'm here with you no matter what. It's not partnership.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you do leave that relationship, definitely take the time to heal because it is ugly. You are going to be in dark places. It's not rainbows and butterflies, but allow yourself to sit in that dark place and uncover those wounds that this person has created on you and look back and say, why did this happen? How can I better the situation? I now know that this is a red flag. And so this is what I will be looking forward to for the rest of my life. Like I said, he was my greatest teacher. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And when you
Yeah.
are in that place, okay, I really have healed. Like, people ask that about my parents. Like, how can you talk about them with so much love? And they tried really hard. Did they both do a lot wrong? Heck yeah. But they
Yeah.
tried really hard, and I've dealt with the places where I was hurt by them. So I don't need to hold on to that longer. Yeah. And if you are stepping away from a relationship, just a couple of things to prepare for. They may try to win you back, like happened for you. Be careful, because a lot of times they will whoosh back and try to get you back. They may they may just obliterate you to the world. Be prepared for that. And they may act like you never existed. And all three of those hurt because you want the person to love you.
Yeah.
But all three of those don't end up with you really being loved. And
Yeah. No.
that's the key. You don't end up really being loved in that relationship, you end up being forced to be someone the way they want you to be to fill their ego. That's not love.
No, you're absolutely
That's
right. Not.
possession.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and further, you can reach out to either of us if you have questions about that. If you're in a situation like that and need some guidance, we both can send you resources and books and things like that to
I can
explore.
definitely send the resources. You
Yeah.
can, everybody reach out to Dr. Browne if you need more additional resources other than myself. But yes, this is definitely a top-notch topic that I like to discuss a lot about because I've been through it and I've
And it's
experienced,
becoming more
and a lot of
prevalent,
people
which
do
is interesting.
experience it. So I want to help them
Yeah. It's becoming
recognize
much more
the signs before
prevalent.
it's too late.
It's becoming much more prevalent, it seems.
Yes.
Or we're just talking about it more, so we're more aware of it. But
Yes,
I think it's becoming more prevalent.
I do too. It's
Yeah.
like what, one in like 4 people now. So out there, we have to be so aware. Get educated, guys. Stay
Yeah.
informed.
And keep taking care of yourself
Yeah.
in every relationship and out of every relationship. Keep taking care of yourself. It's important that you do. You are your own person. It's your own body. It's your own mind. It's your own heart. Whomever you're with or you're with no one, keep doing what really helps you feel best within you. Very important.
Yes. Well, Dr. Brown, is there anything else you'd like to leave with us for our audience?
Oh, I would just like to say every single day, give yourself a moment and ask yourself, like right now, where's a place that I could love on myself a little bit better? Where's the place that I could be a little bit kinder to myself or a little bit gentler with myself? I think we all can be pretty harsh. And I think we
We are.
all need to embrace ourselves a whole lot better. So throughout the day, just say, am I doing this with love? Am I doing this with kindness? And when I make my coffee in the morning, I say, here you go, sweetheart, because I'm here all by myself. So I still say, here you go, sweetheart, this is for you. And I like it better than just, drink the coffee. There's the place of, are you in the moment of loving yourself?
I love that.
And it just feels better. So give that to yourself. And the more you do, the more you'll start to see you don't need it so much from others, though it's lovely, but you really can cultivate quite a bit within yourself and within the life that you have. So let yourself enjoy that.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And make sure you guys go out and purchase Speaking with the Heart. I'm sure it's got some great information. I'm going to go grab it as soon as I can. Remember, you guys, stay informed. Don't forget that your journey to healing starts with understanding. Stay strong, because every step towards awareness is a step towards freedom. Until next time, keep riding the waves of transformation with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Browne. It was such an honor to have you here today.
Oh, love. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted. I hope it blessed people.
Yes, I'm sure it will. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
For more information, you can visit Dr. Browne's website at drheatherbrowne.com, along with her Instagram and Facebook pages at Dr. Heather Browne. You can also pick up a copy of her book titled Speaking with the Heart wherever books are sold and online. For more information, where to find me, you can visit me at deepwavescoaching.com and on my social media pages at Deep Waves Life Coaching.